so for the next part, we've seen that we migrated everything. So let's go back and check the data validation. Okay, so right now we've seen that the project was successfully migrated, and now let's check the data itself in ALMQC. We have here the ALMQC, and we have here the Octane workspace. Okay, so just put this here. Okay, perfect, and we can check them together. So first, we're going to start with the customization validation. So if we go to customize in LMQC, and we are the same in the customization part of the project in Octane, we can go ahead and check the lists, for example. So we have the project list from here, and the lists from Octane side. So first, let's check the user-defined lists. Okay, and we can see that not all of the lists from here were created, and this is because the default setup of the migration tool to migrate only the lists that are used by some fields. So as you can see here in Octane, you can view exactly what field uses this list, and only that list will be migrated by the migration tool. So for example, if you check the category list, let's also go here and search for the category, we can see the list values exactly as in LMQC. Okay, also this option, you can choose to add a parameter that will migrate all of the lists regardless if they are used or not by some fields. Okay, now moving to the fields migration, you can check the fields from project entities. And let's, for example, check the defect one. We have the system fields, and if you go here in Octane at entities, okay, for defects, and we have the fields here, and if we go for user-defined fields, we can expand the user-defined list for fields here, and we can check all of the created UDFs, all the UDFs that were created by the migration tool. So for example, let's take field language, and we can search it for the label language. Those were automatically created by the tool, so we did not map those fields inside the configuration file. And we can see that the field was created on Octane with the same label language, and with the name posted by the migration tool, defect_3 the underscore UDF. UDF posted automatically because it's a mandatory setup for the Octane field. Okay, and the 3 represents the number of the user from the name. So it's bg_user_03, and that's the migration tool posted the name 3 inside the Octane field. And we can find all of the fields from here, the UDFs, and also some UDFs created from the system fields that we can check in the functional scope document. Okay. So this is done also for other entities. If we go to tests, we can check for tests as well, manual test, and the same fields from here were created as well for the tests. Okay, now if we go back to releases, we can also check the releases. We can already see that some releases were added to Octane. Okay, so we can go to releases in QC, and we can see that the releases from here were also migrated in Octane. With an extra note here that the migration tool will post the ID of the release from LMQC in front of its name when it's bringing it to Octane. This is just for validation purposes and for better checking the releases. For example, if we go to release new, here we should search, we see that it's the ID 1007, and we should check here for that release. Let's see, here it is, the release new, and we can see that this release doesn't have any sprints as well. No sprints were added in Octane. And if we go to this one, for example, release 10.6, we can check it here. see. I think it's in this folder. Yep. So we have here the release 10.6, and if we expand this, we can see that it has 5 sprints, and all of the sprints were also migrated in Octane. And if we go here for more details, we can see the start date, the end date, and all of other information, as well as if we go to timeline, we can see the actual sprints here. Okay, and what the migration tool will do is that there is an extra release called unassigned on the Octane side that migration tool will create it automatically, and this release does not exist on the QC side. So the migration tool is creating this extra release because for manual runs in Octane the release field is mandatory and in QC it's not. So when it's trying to bring a manual run from QC to Octane, then Octane will require to have this field completed, and if the migration tool cannot assign it a value, then the migration of that run will fail. So in that case, the tool will create this extra release and it will assign it to all of the releases, to all of the runs that don't have a release assigned in QC. Okay, so this was the part of the customization with releases, fields, and lists. Okay, so now we can go to the actual data mode and we can close here, and we can start with the requirements. So let's check the requirements migration first. Okay, we're already posted here. Okay, add requirements beside LM Octane, and we can see that the folder structure was kept also in the migration. So all of the folders from here are also present inside LM Octane, and with a small difference here being that, for example, if you go to business modules folder and we expand it, we can see that in QC we can have requirement documents and requirement folders under the same folder. Well, in Octane, because we only have one type of requirement document, that won't be possible. And what the migration tool will do in this case, it will create automatically an extra requirement folder called root, and it will encapsulate all of the requirement documents from under the business module folder. So if you check here, we can see that activities, we have the activities folder, and if we expand it, we can see all of the requirements, and as well if we expand it here, we can see all of the requirements under activities folder. Okay, and this goes as well for the 2 requirement documents that are under the requirement folder. If we expand the requirements folder, we can see those 2 requirements. Okay, so now let's check also the other view of the requirements. If we go to requirements grid, okay, let's see, we can see that a total of 231 requirement documents are present inside LMQC project, and if you go to the higher level of folder requirements, we can also see that this is the number of the migrated requirement documents. Okay, and as well, if we go here to the filter in QC and we can check only the folder requirements, okay, we can see that there are a number of 6 of them, as well as 6 of them were also created in Octane. So we can check that by simply checking also the migration log, and we can see that requirement folders were a total of 6 created. Okay, so this wraps it up about the requirements, and actually let's open a requirement as well. If we eliminate the filter here. Okay, so let's open a requirement, for example this one, because this requirement also has a link attached to it. So origin and destination, we'll just open this one. Okay, let's minimize it. And another useful thing for validation purposes that the migration tool will create, it's that it will create automatically an entity ID field, and in this field it will post the value of the ID of the entity from LMQC. So if we arrange by this one and we search for requirement 143, we can see that 143 is the same requirement as in QC, origin and destination. And if we open this one, okay, we can see here multiple fields also migrated, and the description that was migrated as well. And if we go to relationships, we can see that this requirement has multiple relationships with the defect requirement and another requirement, and also manual tests. And if we check this in QC, we can see we have a link to defect here, a requirement traceability, which is available flights list, and also test coverage. Okay, that's covered by 3 tests, and all of the tests we can see them here inside Octane. Okay, so this should wrap it up about the requirements migration. Okay, and now if we move to the testing, let's go to test plan and check the manual tests. If we go in Octane to quality, then we should be able to see the tests here. Okay, so first let's start with the application modules and the folder structure. If we change here the view beside QC, we can see here the folder structure of the manual tests, and also those folders were migrated as well in the application modules tab in Octane. And for example, we set up the configuration of the parameter to migrate the test folders, which is for manual tests, and the test sets folders, which are for test sets. So the test folders, the test folder will come from the test plan, meaning these ones. And if we expand this one, we can see all of the folders from here. Probably not all of the folders were migrated because we have set up the parameter inside the configuration file to exclude the empty folders. So if a folder is empty, then the migration tool excluded that. And I think we can check that. Let's see, I think it's external automation. Let's expand this one. Okay, so the migration tool recognizes this as being empty because this is not a manual test type, and that's why the migration tool identified this folder as empty. If we go here to type, we can see this is an external test type. Okay, and for example, if we check flight reservation in Octane, if we expand flight reservation with this one, and we can see if we click on the flight reservation, we'll be able to see all of the tests inside this folder. And if we go to book flight, expand this one, actually let's expand something else which has that test flight confirmation. If we go to flight confirmation, we can see the 4 tests under the flight confirmation folder, as well in application modules. Okay, and if we go to the higher test folder, okay, which is the higher level of the manual tests, okay, we can see that there are a total of 109 manual tests. And if we go to the test grid view, we can also see that there are 109 manual tests. I also have a filter here set up for manual tests because only those types of tests will be in the migration scope. Okay, and if we check a manual test, let's check actually this one, itinerary page, and open this manual test. The entity ID field is also created for manual tests as well, so we can easily check on that. Okay, we have this one. Okay, and let's start with the details. So we have the details here with the description and everything migrated. Okay, also the steps were added to the description field as well, because we have that parameter set up in the configuration file to append the steps. Okay, this can be disabled. If we go to relations, okay, we can see that this test has multiple relationships with defects, requirements, is linked to a manual run, and it's part of some test suites. Okay, and if we go to steps and the design steps tab here in QC, okay, we can see that the steps from here were also migrated in the steps tab in Octane. Okay, and also with calls made to different tests. So you can see that in the first step, it's calling another manual test. And if we click on this one, it will redirect us to the called manual test. Okay, as well as the attachment. So I think we have also here an attachment that is present. And if we check the attachments, okay, we can see here the attachments as well. Okay, so let's check now the test sets. Okay, so if we go to test plan in QC, and let's minimize this folder and expand the test sets folder. Okay, we can see again that the folders from here are also present in Octane in application modules for test sets folder, which are brought from the test lab. Okay, and if we go again to the higher level of test sets folder, okay, let's see here we have a filter. Let's go to test suites as well. Okay, and we can see all of the test sets from LMQC. Okay, and if we go, for example, to modeling folder, okay, we can click on modeling and we can see the two test sets from the modeling folder. And if we open assemble folder test set, okay, let's open this one here in Octane as well, and we can see that under planning we can see all of the tests, all of the manual tests that are included in this test set, as well as they are assigned here in Octane. Okay, and if we go to details, let's open this one, go to details here, we can see the details migrated, and we can also see the planning and so on. Okay, now let's move on to manual test runs. Okay, so we can view the runs separately in QC, and in Octane that is not possible, so we don't have a separate tab for manual runs. We can find the manual runs only under the manual tests. So in order to check that, let's open, for example, one manual run. Let's see this manual run. Okay, and we can check the test name of this manual run. Okay, it seems like this is the test name, and we can make a filter and search for it inside Octane. Let's see. Filter on name. Okay, and we can see the manual test in Octane, and if you go here, open the test and go to the runs tab, okay, we should be able to see this manual run underscore 11.3 and at the end with 46. So we can see the test here. We can see that it's passed, so it was the data was synchronized, was migrated. Okay, and if we open this manual run, okay, we can see the steps as well, the steps and the report. Actually, the report you can see as well. From here, it was migrated. And if you go to details, we can see multiple fields migrated. Okay, and the last part, let's move to the defects. If we check here the defects in QC and go to the issues tab inside the LM Octane, here we can see that there were a total of 62 defects migrated, as well as 62 we have on the Octane side. Okay, for example, let's open one of the defect. Let's open the defect 3, I think. Okay, we have this defect right here. And again, the entity ID is available for defects as well. Okay, and if we check the same one, it's the defect with ID 3. It is the list of flights is given. Okay, and this is the defect. We can see that the status was migrated to phase. The severity was migrated as high. Okay, and it appears high because we mapped the value 3-high to high from Octane and all of the other fields. Okay, also if you can see here, uh, if you can see here, also the user was mapped, so we can see that the detected by field was detected by the Alice user, and we also have we already had an existing user called Alice inside ALM Octane, and it automatically identified this user and mapped it in detected by field. Okay, and if you go to attachments, we should also have an attachment here. Yeah, we have a URL attachment that is present, and if you go to relations, yeah, we have multiple relations with defects, with tests and manual runs. Okay, so this is the validation of the data and how we can check that the data was migrated correctly inside ALM Octane. And what I want to check also is, and I want to show you also, is the user, how the users were mapped. So if you go to spaces, okay, if you go to the space level, we can see that there were some users created on this side, okay, and the default one that we assigned also in the user mapping file, which is 1001. Okay, this will be the default one, and other 3 users. Okay, and when the migration was done, those users were automatically assigned to the workspace in which we migrated. So if we go to demo migration workspace, okay, and check the users, we can also see them here. They were added automatically by the migration tool. Okay, and as I said before, with the user mapping, they were automatically mapped, because if we check the user mapping file, we cannot see any of those users mapped here, but they were automatically mapped based on their email and their login name. So for example, if I go to QC, okay, I should enter the site admin. Okay, and I want to check the user Robert_ALM, see exactly how it was mapped automatically by the tool. Okay, so I'm now inside the site user. Okay, and if I go to site users, let's search for Robert_ALM. Okay, and I can find it here. So you see it has the same username as in Octane, and based on that, the tool automatically recognized him and mapped him. Okay, and let's also search for Alice. For example, if we go here and check for Alice, seeing that Alice doesn't have the same login name. Okay, because the login name in QC is Alice_ALM, and for us in Octane it's only Alice, but it has the same email address. So Alice at alm.com, and it's the same email address for Octane. That's why it got automatically updated and mapped. Okay, so this is how a project looks like when it's successfully migrated inside ALM Octane, with all of the customization migrated, and as well as the entities.